now time for the Billy C. Show, part of the BillyCBoxing.com network.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C. Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero, and it's time for the Billy C. Show. Good morning, good day, good evening, whenever you're listening. I hope you're doing okay today. Today's show is being brought to us in part by the Title Bout Championship computer game. Check it out. Visit BillyCBoxing.com and click on the banner. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by SouthernGourmetSpice.com. Check that out, www.southerngourmetspice.com, the only place that I get my spices from. And today's show is being brought to us in part by my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet, is available right now where all good books are sold. You can get a copy right now while you're watching or listening to this very show. This very show, it is the Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder triple. It was the trifecta. Same old story. Tyson wins by a knockout, 11th round knockout. Official time, 1 minute, 10 seconds of the 11th round. What a fight. Honestly, it was a great fight. I was impressed. with Wilder. I really was. I got to be honest. I was impressed with Wilder because in that first round, I said, oh, my God. You know, the whole comment from Malik Scott, I'm going to bring out everything in his toolbox. I figured he's had like a little teeny-weeny little play toolbox because there's only one thing in it, and that's power, and that's all that was still in it. However, he did throw body shots. It was the first time I ever saw Deontay Wilder throw body shots, especially against Tyson Fury, and he looked good. The first round, I thought he won easily, and I gave him the second round too because I thought it was a close round. And, of course, I gave him the fourth round when he dropped Tyson Fury not once but twice. But then every other round I gave to Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, he controlled the fight. Wilder had no answer. Zero. No. Nada. No answer to the jab at all. It was just nothing. There was absolutely no jab at all. And joining us right now is my man, Alex Papali. What's up, Alex? What'd you think?
Good morning.
Good morning, Billy.
Hey, good. Hey, you're right. It is good morning. It is good morning here in the East. It's right about morning now where you are, right? You're from Chicago today, right?
Yes, I am.
Yes, I am. Coming to Chicago.
Okay.
It's not even midnight here yet.
Yeah, it is. It's three. Isn't it 3 minutes after? What do you want? Oh, 1 hour.
It's 1 hour behind. So it's only 11:52.
Oh, 1 hour behind. It's 12:50. Whatever. What'd you think of the fight?
Oh, it's 11:52 here on my clock. So yeah, then it's almost midnight.
So what do you? What'd you think?
I thought it was a really good fight. I didn't think that. I thought the announcing, of course, was a little much, but I really enjoyed the fight, and I think part of why it's so thrilling is that these guys are not the upper echelon of heavyweights that some of the pre-fight stuff was talking about. Because I think as good as Tyson Fury is, and he is, no question, he's better than Deontay Wilder. I think that he dropped 5 times. Or no, Wilder got dropped 5 times. He got dropped. He got dropped 2 more times. So, yeah, and it did look pretty scary there in that 4th round. But you're right. I pretty much had a similar score. Fury was in rough shape there for a little bit, and it was interesting. You're absolutely right. I thought that Wilder did use a much better toolbox. And yeah, his toolbox got a little larger. And I think that the body shots were beautiful. Why he abandoned them, I don't really get it.
1 round. He gave it 1 round.
Yeah.
And
I think maybe he was realizing that he's being kind of vulnerable, reaching for the body. I don't know. And I think you're right. I mean, the same thing that was the problem in the previous two fights became the problem again. Just the jab and that overhand right. And,
Zero answer. Deontay Wilder has zero answer for the jab.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question about that. But joining us right now is Dax Khan. What's up, Dax?
Hey, what's up, fellas?
Hey, Dax.
What'd you think of the fight?
That was a great fight. The only thing that would really, in my opinion, hurt Deontay Wilder right now is if he made any sort of excuse, because I think that despite all the nonsense and everything, he actually redeemed himself with the courage and the fact that he stood there, went toe-to-toe. He did not at any point in time look like he wanted to give up. He argued with the doctor to not stop that fight. He went out on his shield like he wanted to do in the first fight. So there's really nothing you can say about that. Yes, if Deontay Wilder, I believe, would have been able to carry on what he did in that first round for a couple more rounds, maybe things would have been a bit different. Or even if after he dropped Fury those 2 times and Deontay Wilder reverted back to what he did the first round, he might end up with stoppage. But overall, I mean, let's be honest, I don't think anybody, and I put this out on our Twitter feed, who would have ever thought 3 years ago, 4 years ago, probably the most action-packed heavyweight fight of the decade was going to take place between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury?
Well, not me. The one thing I've always maintained, Deontay Wilder, even though he did come out today in the first round, and it was impressive with the body work, and you're right, Alex. I don't know why he abandoned it. He seemed to be hitting Tyson Fury at will, but he ran out of gas quickly in the fight. I made some notes that by the 5th round he was displaying, at least in my opinion, fatigue, and it didn't go away. He didn't seem to get the second wind. I mean, all 9 announcers, that's how many there were, 9. Brian Kenny, Lennox Lewis, Andre, or is he still Dre? Ward, Kelly Abdu, Max Kellerman, Sean Porter, Heidi Andro, Bernardo Runsuma, and don't forget my man Larry Hazard, who, incidentally, every time they put the score up, mine was like identical to his. They said it was a stacked card for the 79-99. I don't know. I mean, on paper, I guess it was, but look at it this way. The first 3 fights, the total rounds scheduled were 30. We got to see 18, and 10 of them came in the last fight. What did you guys think of the card overall?
Less than impressive. I mean, I had high hopes for the Ajagba fight. I think it was interesting what we saw, but it certainly was not action packed.
I thought Sanchez was impressive, though, Alex.
Oh, I agree with you. I thought in terms of seeing Ajagba tested, and not only tested but have no answers. Flunk a test. I think that was definitely worthwhile and was enjoyable to see, but in terms of action and getting your money's worth, it was not that. It was so one-sided, and I think that was one of the things that disappointed me, was that it was a lot of times, and I guess this is what happens all the time now, is the lead announcer is also a salesman, and they're telling you something is better than it is. And at one point, that's what Brian Kenny was like, this is high-level stuff. Yeah, but it's boring, Brian.
On paper, the Jagba and Sanchez fight was good. 2 young fighters coming up to fight each other. But Dax, Adam Kausnowski, what happened to him? I mean, does Helenas just have his number? I mean, he wasn't in that fight from the first minute of the fight.
Let's be honest. Looking at my notes, and I said this before about Kausnowski, is that he's fun to watch on a certain level, but after that, he's not really exciting. It's okay to be good on that certain local level. Kausnowski is like a Broadway boxing type guy. He has the build of an Andy Ruiz Jr., but he doesn't have the pedigree or the skill set or the chin of an Andy Ruiz Jr. And in their first meeting, people thought Helenius was past it. So, Kauznacki, he just isn't durable. He doesn't have a great chin. He has an incredible outpunch for a guy his build. He's a very undersized heavyweight. He's more like an oversized cruiserweight. And I don't mean that to be insulting. It's just he doesn't have the pedigree to be able to compete at this level with his size and his conditioning. And it happens. I'm just a little disappointed that he kind of took the Andrew Galata route out of that fight, but considering that they rushed him to the hospital so quickly, kind of instead of Galata Bo with the low blows, you're kind of thinking Galata Tyson, where Galata just kind of quit in that fight and said, I'm not going to continue. I remember Duva was yelling and screaming at him, talking about you're embarrassing yourself, and later on turned out that Galata actually had something seriously wrong with him.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was one of the things about that fight was that he knew he was getting battered, and I was a little surprised it took so long for the ring doctor to come in.
I was just going to say, Alex, because he was his corner. What about his corner? His corner should have realized that he was having trouble seeing out of his eye. They didn't do him any favors.
Yeah, and that was the other thing is that I agree with Dax that it was one of those things where he decided, look, I want out of this, and I don't want to go out knocked out. I just want out. And the low blows is is sort of the gentleman's equivalent to running across there and biting off a piece of his ear and eating it. So I think in that sense we got to be thankful, I guess. But you're right. I mean, it was one of those things that he got the Helenius beat out of him. So I do think that it's a weird time that we're living in, because who would have thunk that Robert Helenius now is sort of injected into the heavyweight picture.
I still think
I thought I heard them say that now he's a mandatory for Usyk.
Yeah, for the WBA belt. But listen, I still think the heavyweight, the top heavyweights are still the same guys. Yeah. Even with the losses, of course, Tyson Fury it sits at number one, and I still and Usyk now has to be number two. I would love to see those two guys fight. We probably won't see it for a while. But I think that AJ and Deontay are still those 3 and 4. Who are you going to put in front of them?
Wouldn't that be a fun fight? Joshua versus Wilder?
Well, that fight is a money fight. That should be the fight. That should be the next fight. And I think that Wilder has every chance of knocking out Joshua because I think Joshua's chin is suspect. But speaking of Wilder, let's go back to the fight, Dax. Deontay Wilder, somebody in the chat room just said that he looked concussed. I do. I think Deontay he clearly showed heart in this fight, but too much. Because what I mean by that was, he's not going to be the same fighter. He left something in the ring tonight. He did seem out of whack. His arms were down. It was amazing that he was able to muster up some power shots. I think he was out, really. I knew that this fight was going to end in a knockout by the 5th round. I could see it in Wilder. He didn't have anything else left. There was nothing in that toolbox. I'm telling you, there was nothing in there. What'd you think, Dax?
I had made a comment on social media that this was by the 5th round was kind of like a poor man's Lennox Lewis, Vitaly Klitschko, where they were both really tired and they started getting sloppy. But Tyson Fury had a little bit more in his gas tank. Deontay Wilder, and I believe it really hurt him to add on that muscle. Deontay Wilder, remember the last time the excuse was that 40-pound suit and the extra weight that he put on. So this time he comes in at a career high with extra muscle. There's a lot of people on social media who wanted to debate with me, and I just, decided, I'm not even going to debate with them. I actually blocked them on their account because you're taught in even high school that, it takes more oxygen to feed muscle than it does even fat. So why would you add that much onto you knowing that you're going to have a guy that's even bigger that's going to consistently come at you and has quite a bit of stamina, and you're going to lose flexibility and you're going to lose a lot of your mobility that you already had limited amounts of. So I think that was a bad game plan. Deontay Wilder, all the weightlifting in the world wasn't going to make him hit any harder.
Listen,
if that makes sense.
it goes back to the same stuff I've been saying about Deontay Wilder from day one. He's a one-trick pony. That's the end of story. That's why the fans like him. He's exciting. We want to see him. We want to see him knock people out. That's what people pay to see him for. And you know what? He tried his damnedest. He just doesn't have the skill set. He doesn't. He can't defend himself. Once he gets shot, look, I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. He had no answer, zero for the jab. Couldn't get out of the way of it. Tyson Fury, his corner saying, just throw the jab. Tyson Fury was going for that knockout, but if he just stood there behind his jab, he would have knocked the crap out of Wilder anyway. The jab was getting in and hurting. I thought that the jabs was stinging Wilder more. Obviously he would come back with the right hands, and those uppercuts were sneaking in all night. And I think at some times even all 9 announcers missed the uppercuts. I thought they were getting in there pretty well. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things about this, that in a weird way, this has been a sort of a one-sided trilogy with flashes of brilliance from the guy who is really the lesser fighter in Deontay Wilder. And I think that's one of the reasons, and it speaks volumes about power and his explosiveness, because you could change everything so quickly, and everybody's sort of waiting for that. And to his credit, he definitely followed more of a game plan under Malik Scott tonight than he has in the past. Maybe he go back. I think he did. He definitely looked better than he did the last time. But again, I think that he is always going to come up short against Tyson Fury, because I think Tyson Fury is just more skilled. I think one of the things that I was just overjoyed to see, and it was just amazing, was that clip of Emmanuel Stewart. That was amazing that he called this 9 years before this happened. That was pretty cool, because he did show you that he was able to see stuff that every even big boxing fans don't see, and that's pretty amazing. And it was a great clip of all the tediousness of waiting for these guys. I feel like part of me will never stop waiting for them to start that fight. But that was really worth watching. That Emmanuel Stewart thing.
Hey Dax, round 4, Deontay Wilder dropped Tyson Fury not once but twice. On my scorecard, I had given Wilder the first 2 rounds, and then of course I gave round 3 to Fury. He dropped Wilder in that round, but then Wilder comes back and drops him twice. What's your thoughts on that? And do you think Tyson Fury was really hurt? At one point I thought he was, then I thought maybe he wasn't. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, and again, that's why I say, because on fight nights, for everybody that's listening and likes to want to get mad at Billy about certain comments, I'm the one that's on our Twitter account on fight nights. But I did mention on there, I said Tyson Fury looked more exhausted, more tired than he did hurt in that second knockdown, because he kind of gave a look of, kind of made frumped his face a little bit and rolled his eyes, and took a second, to get up. More or less, it was kind of like, all right, I'm down. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to take my time, and then I'll get back up. But he definitely did not look like he was, out on his feet. It wasn't like, he barely made it back to his corner, and, they had to, in between rounds, throw ice inside his shorts and, do everything they possibly could to rejuvenate him. Well,
I'll tell you one thing. They didn't seem like they were, in the corner, at least, obviously. They didn't seem like they were, trying to see. I don't think he had his faculties back for the rest of the fight, to be honest with you. The actions that I see Deontay, and I saw it in the previous fight against Tyson Fury. You start jabbing the guy, all of a sudden he just becomes a deer in headlights, and then it's a matter of time before you stop him. You connect with him, and he doesn't seem to be able to stand the punch. He gets up, but I don't know. To me, his eyes were glassing. It was going in automatic. That's why he didn't do anything else after that first round. because I think he got into that. I'm going to knock him out with my only tool, my power right hand. And to his credit, he still had the power even when he was hurt.
I didn't think. I think more to Dax's point that to me, he's and my brother. That was one of the pleasures of coming out here to Chicago. Is I got to watch the fight with my brother, and we've seen so many great fights together that this was fun. But I agree with Dax that I think the fatigue. I thought he was more fatigued than he was concussed, at least up until maybe the 7th or 8th round. Then it was just a matter of time before he landed that really, really big shot. And in a way, you got to think that cold-cocked Deontay Wilder, that's what Mark Breland was trying to prevent last time. But I do think that what Dax was saying, it's that extra muscle. It doesn't help you in a fight like this. Boxing is an endurance sport. It's not just raw power. And not only that, but he made a big deal about bench pressing. Bench pressing is not even the right movement for boxing because you're not lying on your back pushing something up. You're standing with an opponent. So I don't know, but whatever.
I have a feeling that for whatever reason, they thought the bench pressing was going to benefit them in terms of when Fury comes in and mauls him, that he would be able to shove him off him, and that would give him the strength. When I was saying about the fatigue, I was talking about Fury in the 4th round. When you look at him again, when you go back and you look at that fight, Fury didn't seem hurt. He kind of just seemed like he was a little bit tired, and he was just going to wait the round out and wasn't going to give Deontay Wilder a chance to knock him down a 3rd time.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
In terms of Deontay Wilder, that video of him and Lennox Lewis meeting by chance had been circulating over the last few days, where Lennox was trying to show him how to keep the jab a little bit extended so you get a faster reach and a faster pullback, and you're able to bring it back up for defense quicker. And I have been very vocal in saying, imagine if Deontay Wilder would have just developed the Mark Breland jab. He has that Mark Breland build, and imagine, in this fight, let's just say, because he has the Tommy Hearns build, he has the Mark Breland build. Imagine him with the legs of Tommy Hearns moving around like Tommy Hearns moved around in the Sugar Ray Leonard 1 fight, and Tyson Fury coming in and Deontay Wilder catching him with those big right hands and then moving before Tyson Fury is able to pin Deontay Wilder on the ropes. I honestly think that Deontay Wilder would be almost unbeatable because he'd be almost untouchable.
Exactly. No, listen, we said it when Wilder first hit the scene. They relied so much on, first of all, they hand-fed him very easy opposition. Let's be real. They were including Malik Scott, who laid down for him in that half of 1st round or something, knockout, whatever it was. But he never got better. And because all of the yes men in his ear, he went in and did the one thing, the power. Even if he started trying to learn, he displayed the jab against Stavern. Then I didn't see the jab again. He displayed body work tonight. I had never seen him display the body work that he incorporated in the 1st round. But then he goes back to anything that comes automatic. It's a natural thing. His automatic is to rely on that right hand, and it saved him in every fight but 2,
Right, and also, but to his credit tonight, I think he also showed a lot of mental toughness because he could have, caved in a lot earlier. He definitely was up for this fight. So I got to give him credit for that. I'm surprised that he did as well as he did. Not that, to make him into and that was another thing about Brian Kenny was like comparing it to Ali Frazier. Please stop.
They were trying to do what they could. There's no Ali Frazier.
Yeah. I mean,
this wasn't Bo Holyfield.
Right. Very good point. Yeah. I mean, but I do think that it was a lot of fun and, it was worth the wait, pretty much. But But I do think that I am looking forward to seeing Fury versus Usyk. I definitely like to see how that shakes out. I do think one of the things my brother pointed out, Dax, is that I liked watching that clip too of Lennox Lewis showing Wilder that. But the thing that my brother noticed was that it was Fury doing it. There was a few times that Fury did exactly that, and it shouldn't be surprising because who's Fury got in his corner? Sugar Hill, who has that Kronk connection as well. And I do think that, that's why he's always going to beat Deontay Wilder. He just has more skill.
Hey, speaking of the Kronk connection, that's an amazing story in itself, if you think about it. Let's be real. My knock on Tyson Fury has been, for a man his size, and I've said this, for a man his size, he doesn't seem to have that power punch until he went with Kronk. Now all of a sudden he's trying people. I've also
punched through the target.
I've also said that Deontay Wilder, I have said from day one, has a suspect chin, which he does, but he stayed on his feet. I tell you, it was a rough fight for Russell Mora. I'll tell you, I never saw this guy. Did you hear what? He's like keeping him away, and at one point he's going, "Thank you." He's like, I was starting to get into because I'm waiting up, and he's like, yelling at them all time. It was fun to watch the struggles of him. I bet you he sleeps good tonight.
Russell Moore, when I heard he got the assignment, I cringed. I don't like Russell Moore as a referee. I think Tony Weeks should be the referee for all heavyweight fights because Tony Weeks is a good referee and is a big guy who's able to separate them. But in terms of Tyson Fury, and I tell the story to a lot of people, and I'm surprised how many boxing people don't realize this, and especially because, Alex, you had mentioned Emmanuel Stewart. Before Peter Fury and Tyson came here when he was very young, before Tyson Fury ever punched himself in the face, and he spent time at Kronk Gym because he was enamored with Kronk and all the great things that came out of there. And Manny Stewart said that's going to be a future world champion before Tyson Fury went back to the UK and before he even had that series of fights with Derek Chisora. And so that style, and I mentioned that on the show here before, remember, Lennox Lewis at 6'5" was 2 to 3 inches bigger than most of his opponents, 20 pounds heavier, 30 pounds heavier. Same thing with Tyson Fury and 6'6" and 6'7" guys. And the important thing about that style is because they are so big, it doesn't matter if you are muscular or not. You need to be able to set the pace, and that is what is more or less allowed Lennox Lewis and Vladimir Klitschko to be so dominant, is that they were able to use that extra size and they were able to set the pace against guys that were faster, more mobile, and maybe guys that might have even hit harder. They were able to, smother them. It wasn't always the most beautiful thing to watch, but it was definitely the most effective style. It's something that a guy like Nikolai Vulev, because he was so uncoordinated, wouldn't have been able to do. But somebody like, Klitschko, as we know, for 10 years, Lennox Lewis, and now Tyson Fury is able to do. It's going to be interesting to see if Tyson Fury is able to do that against somebody like a Usyk who is constantly turning him, and he's not able to pin down.
Yeah. How can Tyson Fury? So here's a question. We know what Deontay Wilder would need to do should he want to, come back and win big fights again. I mean, obviously, we said earlier he's a great big money fight for him would be against Anthony Joshua. I think that would be a big demand for that fight, and should he win that, he would get another world title shot, I'm sure. But with that said, we know what he would need to do. He'd have to go and start working on some of the other. First of all, buy some tools to put in that toolbox. Trade in the little Barbie toolbox and maybe get one that can fit a couple of tools. Try to bring those out and win. But the question is, can Tyson Fury do anything to get better? I mean, this guy in the Wilder trilogy alone, I think he's proved a lot to us. I've been a Tyson Fury fan since day one. We had a listener that turned me on to him years ago when he first started. I watched every single fight They brought them over, and he was a work in progress. At one point, he couldn't fight guys smaller than him. He would take his jab up too high. I remember we talked about it on the show. And he seemingly has corrected those things. And today we saw Tyson Fury fight a great fight. We saw him fight 3 great fights with Deontay Wilder. My question is, can he get better? Are there things that he would need to do or can do that would actually kick it up a notch? I mean, he is only 33 years old. What do you guys think, Dax?
I think that for him to get better, he would need to, one, tighten up his physique a little bit, add a little bit more stamina, because there are a lot of other guys out there that are 6'7", 6'8", that are more skilled than Deontay Wilder, and they're more mobile than Deontay Wilder. And also Tyson Fury, as we know already from his history, from the time he defeated Vladimir Klitschko, Tyson Fury has a little bit of a like for the party life. And so he needs to stay away from that if he expects to stay on top. But you're right, he's young. In terms of boxing ability, I really don't think there's much else that he needs to correct. His chin is proven, despite all the thoughts that we believed, multiple, millions of us believed, due to the Steve Cunningham knockdown, that he would be able to take a punch from a huge heavyweight, which obviously now we know that Tyson Fury, not only can he take a punch, his recuperative powers are amazing. So really, at this point in time, the only person that can beat Tyson Fury is Tyson Fury. If you know what I mean by that, the only way for Tyson Fury to be defeated is for Tyson Fury to lose discipline.
Yeah,
I agree, and I think that, like what Dax said, that I think that those two things sort of increases endurance and maybe, chisel. Clearly, what he looks like physically doesn't matter. He's proven that emphatically. However, the guys that are remaining at the top are much more mobile. So he is going to want to be more fit.
But they're not as big.
Right, they're not as big. Yeah, and that's why. But I think the movement of Usyk is going to be problematic. So yeah, a little endurance. This is an endurance sport. It can't hurt.
As
But
good
I
as
think in terms of skills, yeah, he's the one.
look, I've become a Usyk fan. I was impressed that he beat AJ. All right, but I believe I'm more impressed, even though I said all along that we didn't need to see a third fight. And I said all along that I thought Fury would beat Deontay Wilder again and again and again if he fought him 10 more times. But after tonight's fight and the nature of how it started and how it ended, I got to believe, and no disrespect to Usyk, I got to believe that Tyson Fury beats Usyk because, number one, he's got boxing ability. So does Usyk, of course. But I think it'll boil down to the size. And I just think that Usyk, he did well against AJ. AJ let him do well. The times that AJ was getting to Usyk is when he was aggressive and started letting his hands go. I think Tyson Fury will do that from the get-go and get Usyk to be moving backwards. And once that happens, it's all Fury.
Something interesting about the post-fight with Joshua after the Usyk is, instead of excuses, he admitted that he became enamored with his own power, which, I have to give him a lot of credit for, because when he does want to box, he does have a enormous skill set. He is an Olympic gold medalist for a reason. So, but that put aside, going back to Kronk, Bill, one of our, matter of fact, our very first conversation that you started was about who's your favorite heavyweight. And I mentioned Lennox Lewis. And I thought you were going to have an aneurysm right then and there, right inside Foxwoods. But the interesting thing about Lennox Lewis and Vladimir Klitschko, and this is something I debated with somebody when they asked me who the winner of this fight would be, and I mentioned how the Kronk style is going to be what plays a role in deciding how this turns out. Lennox Lewis and Vladimir Klitschko at 247 pounds were total different fighters than they were at 245 pounds. If you notice, just a couple pounds with that style, for whatever reason, turn them into total different fighters. If you go and you look back on the losses, and it was literally just a couple pounds, the thing about Fury is 20 and 30 pounds doesn't seem to even matter to him.
Hey, speaking of pounds, I put on extra pounds every time I use Kenny Bear's barbecue rub. Check it out, southerngourmetspice.com. And thank God I was starting. I've told you guys I put it on everything. I jones out on it, and I was getting low, and I was nicely hinting around, and I finally got my supply came the other day. I got the goods, but my new favorite, okay, Kenny Bear's is good, but my new favorite is the Kenny Bear's Cajun blackened spice, which I love it. Get yourself a bottle. Tell them Billy C sent you. And speaking of Southern Gourmet Spice.com, joining us right now is my man John Musciunas. John, what'd you think of the fight tonight?
I don't know, but I do that Southern Gourmet Spice website, and tonight I had Kenny Bear's blackened seasoning on a piece of fish that I barbecued out on the grill. So my man Kenny's getting it done. Let me tell you something. What I thought. That was the most excitement I have had at a heavyweight championship fight, watching it on TV, other than the time I was watching Tyson Holyfield 2 in the MGM Grand, but on TV, Bo Holyfield 3. I had the exact flashback to that fight watching this tonight. Now look at Deontay Wilder is not nearly as good a fighter. I don't even know if he's in the same league, maybe. But the dude showed heart. I'm hoarse because I was screaming and yelling when he came back in the fourth round, and I just said, I don't give a crap what happens from after this fourth round. But Wilder came back and said, I'm going to try to win this fight with just one punch or whatever. Gotti Ward, all those kind of guys, and look at. Unfortunately, on the medical side, I am afraid that we're going to be seeing Deontay Wilder slurring in 2028 his speech.
I agree 100%.
That is the fight right there, where when Meldrick Taylor got hit by Chavez, and I was in the car with Meldrick Taylor. I don't know how many years later. It must have been like 2001 or 2. We picked him up in the airport. I had to go in the airport and get him. He was I don't even know if he was 40 years old, and he didn't know where he was. And I had to pick him up and get him back to the car, and he didn't know what city he was in, and he was 42 years old. That fight tonight, as great as it was for us to watch, might be that fight for Deontay Wilder, and I hope it is, and I hope he wakes up and from the concussion, but the beating he just took was epically bad.
It could have been from the last fight because he took the similar beating. And the thing is that his shot of winning the fight, I gave him a lot of credit for round one. The body work was impressive. Round two was close. I did give it to Wilder. I could see it going the other way. Round three, when Fury dropped Wilder, I said, okay, it's the beginning of the end. I said it's the beginning of the end for Wilder, and he comes back and drops Tyson Fury twice. After that round, when in round 5, he looked tired, and he was never the same. And I think that even though he was landing some of those right hands, fellas, I don't think they had the pop on him that they had from the first 4 rounds.
Billy, he was out on his feet after the 4th round. Wilder was. You've seen those fighters that fight out on their feet, way past when somebody should have. And there's no way they were going to stop that fight. I mean, mercifully, he stopped it as soon as he went down there in the 11th. But wow, if I'm, Deontay Wilder's going to fight a ton more. He's going to fight probably way past when he should fight. I hope he's got a ton of money. He looks like he's got a nice wife and a family and stuff. And boy, if somebody could get a hold of him and tell him to retire right now.
One fight. That's what I think he's got one fight that will make him a ton of money, and win, lose, or draw, he should walk away. Because I do agree that it probably is the smartest thing for him right now to walk away. I'm sure his bank account is full. But the one fight, AJ, has to be a big, huge money fight. And I think he's got a good chance of beating him.
Yeah, he's not going to get hurt in the AJ fight. That's the fight he's not going to get hurt in, but I don't think that's going to happen the way this is going. Let me tell you something. I told you this before, Billy. AJ is the millennial Frank Bruno. That's what he is, man.
It could be. Yeah,
millennial Frank Bruno.
I hate to say it because I like
body, same. You know, the only thing missing is him blessing himself 21 times before he's walking into the second Mike Tyson fight. That's what AJ is, man.
No,
after the Andy Ruiz Jr. fight, I said that I said on our social media feed, is Anthony Joshua going to be the next Lennox Lewis, or is he going to be the next Frank Bruno?
He's Frank Bruno.
And John, it's interesting that you brought up Meldrick Taylor, because Teddy Atlas was actually on Twitter, and Teddy Atlas isn't on Twitter that often, and that was the comment that Teddy made in the 7th round, that Deontay Wilder looks just like Meldrick Taylor in the 8th round of the Chavez fight.
That's what he looks like, man. I watched that fight and I digitized it like 20 different versions of it when I was doing Don King's library. And when you look at Meldrick Taylor's eyes, and I'm telling you, I never forget. I tell you, I remember more him getting in that Chevy Astro van with that guy. I think it was in St. Louis we were in, and Don flew him to a fight. And he got in and he was mumbling, and I said, "Oh God, man!" And Meldrick Taylor was a great fighter, great fighter. It was really good. I mean, he was that close to beating Chavez.
I want to interrupt you guys for a second because somebody just made a comment in the chat room, and they made a comment about it during the broadcast, and it was totally wrong when they said it was a slow count. You know, don't they realize that the referee picks up the count? And if he's yelling at somebody or telling him to go back in the corner, the timekeeper's keeping up the count. So if it would have reached 10, they would have hit the bell. There was not. I disagree. What do you guys think?
No, I don't think it was a slow count. And also, I will say this: that, you know what, for the people in here talking about bum squad, don't watch the sport, because Deontay Wilder, as we know, may not be the most skilled, but he showed tonight he is no bum. He went out there and did something that I promised you would not do. And I train fighters, and I have a fighter on Team USA. And at any point in time you want to show you're not a bum, come down to 421 Washington Avenue in Newburgh, New York, and I'll put you in there with my fighter from Team USA, and I'll put them in there with 16-ounce gloves, and you can wear 8-ounce gloves and no headgear, and I guarantee you that 14-year-old makes you feel like a bum.
I'll tell you right now, Alex Papali's training, so everybody better watch out. Get him on notice. But the truth is,
these Type fans that do this, they drive me nuts.
Listen, I hear it all the time. You know, when somebody gets on and they're like, "Oh, you don't know boxing," you know, it's like, come on, you know, it's like funny. It's the same thing with Deontay Wilder. You get a lot of that. With his fan base, but the truth of the matter is things haven't changed with him. Tonight he proved that he had heart. I think some of the pop was off his punches. I do think he landed shots, but because of the lack of skill set, Tyson Fury did what he wanted. Being a little greedy for the knockout, I think Tyson Fury would have had it made the night even easier for himself if he would have thrown the jab more. I really do, you know.
Hey, Billy, do you get the feeling? You know, I had the volume cranked up, and my buddy Mark was driving Uber all night, so he was sleeping on the couch till the 4th round happened. Then I started yelling. My wife woke up, and he woke up, and the dog woke up. But shit, man, I had the volume up on that, and boy, I just got this overwhelming feeling that Tyson Fury's an overwhelming heavyweight, man. He just overwhelms these guys. He's making, you know, I'm looking at Wilder, who's 6'7", he's put 238, he's got big arms, and he just overwhelmed him. And he just doesn't overwhelm him by swarming him. He's overwhelming him with punches and elbows, and he's pushing him around. And I go, wow, you know, Tyson Fury is an overwhelming. He doesn't look like these guys, but he's overwhelming with his presence and what he needs to do. I just got this feeling where, like 7th, 8th, and 9th rounds, I go, God, Wilder's never going to win this fight. There's no way. This guy is too big and too overwhelming with his punches and the stuff that he does. He's a crafty guy.
You know, and Dax, you know, you talk about training the kids and stuff. This should be a lesson to all young fighters to not it's so hard to do because you're young and Mark Twain said it best, too bad youth is wasted on the young. And what happens, and it happened with Deontay Wilder, he had a pop, he had that power. And, they feed him these guys and he never developed the rest of the skill set. And I think that the wrong people were around him. There were a lot of yes men. And they built him up like that. And it's hard. Once you're 30 years old and you've been doing it for 10, 12 years like he has, or even more, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. It really is. Or the discipline factor. I think Dax, you mentioned the discipline earlier. And so I give him credit for the heart. I give him credit for trying to come in and do what he did in the first round. I just think the lack of skill set was the difference. And I think on the other side of the ring, Tyson Fury seems to be kicking it up a notch. His ring IQ, if people don't recognize Tyson Fury's ring IQ, then you don't know boxing. I mean, come on. He's a smart guy, right?
There was people that were trying to race bait. Matter of fact, Michelle Rosado, the Raging Babe, is great. Yesterday, she had to block dozens of people. They were calling her all kinds of slurs because she didn't pick who they wanted to. But in terms of John made a great point. We have all been around, and boxers, whether or not, it's training, Bill, you manage fighters. We've worked for sanctioned bodies. We've worked for promoters. These people who make these comments, they don't know what it's like to be around these fighters who have went in there. As John stated clearly, what it was like with Meldrick Taylor, sitting down, having a conversation with Leon Spinks after everything that they've sacrificed in the ring. We've seen that, and a lot of other fighters and fans or people involved in the sport have seen that. And until you actually see what somebody at 40 years old who at no point in time should have anything wrong with them, has sacrificed so much inside that ring, and they have trained so hard, and their body, just even without taking punches, what they've done. The average person couldn't do it. I mean, that's why it really is 1 in a million, whether or not you are on the bottom level, whether or not you're a world champion. So to sit there and degrade these people, it's one thing to talk about it as a fan, but or as, criticize the performance or the skill set, but, to degrade these people and see some people actually gloat at these guys getting knocked out and getting hurt and being in the hospital and make memes of them, try it for yourself.
It's 2021. That's what they do. Everybody's a badass when they hide behind a computer. Hey, okay.
One thing I think that we should remember about Deontay Wilder, that what he did was very impressive, is that he had been dropped, and then in the next round, he comes back to drop his opponent twice. There's so many. Mike Tyson never did that, to get off the deck and then hurt the other guy. Now, granted, he didn't end up winning, but that's pretty significant, and that's one of the reasons why when they went to Max Kellerman, he was like, that's sensational what we just saw, because
that's him in automatic mode, and that he's using
still Bill.
I do.
And I tell you one thing about it is that it does make you wonder, was that because Tyson Fury just had slips in he was overconfident or whatever, or was the layoff? Was it too?
No, it was. I think
COVID-19 twice from what he said.
That's what he said. Yeah, I think he got caught and he still wasn't recovered. That was the end. The reason why he got dropped twice. But all right, let's.
If I just interrupt for 1 second, I think that's one of the other things. Oh, I'm sorry, Billy C. One of the other things too, that to what John was saying about and Dax about in terms of that sort of Meldrick Taylor situation. I think that's what was the tragic thing that in the Abdul Salamov fight was that you had a guy who was getting clobbered, but he hit so hard, and he had won other fights with it in explosive fashion. So there's this desire, well, let's let it go, because he could change this fight at any time. And we should remember that, okay, that's possible. But in the meantime, he's getting hit again and again and again in the head. And somebody needs to be keeping track of that.
Well, like we always say, the corner is that first line of defense. It's up to them. And Dak said it a million times. The corners are awfully tough. They're awfully tough in there. But all right, so let's look at it this way. You got these heavyweights right now. So let's assume the top two. Of course, people are going to want to see Fury against Usyk. Okay, so now let's assume that the fight I think makes the most sense is AJ against Wilder. So how do you guys think that fight would go? How do you think AJ and Wilder would go, John?
I think Wilder hits him once and AJ breaks down. I think let me tell you something. Wilder is not Tyson, but he hits like Tyson. And I think AJ is like Frank Bruno when he gets hit. That 6'6" dude with muscles crumbles like a little girl, just like he did when a fat guy hit him. Okay, he crumbled like a little girl. That's what happens in that fight, and that's a great fight for Deontay Wilder to take. Take it, put $25 million in the bank, kick his ass, and go home.
Right, and hang it up. Alex, what do you think?
Would be great.
I'd love to see it. I think I would favor Wilder. I do think Joshua's more skilled, but I think that's the thing about it. Like John just alluded to, that if Joshua makes a mistake, which at some point he will, he's going to get caught, and then it's going to be all over.
Dax, what do you think?
I think that if Deontay Wilder did for 3 rounds what he did in the first round of this fight, Anthony Joshua might not make it past the second round.
First of all, if he would have done what he did in the first round of Tyson Fury for 5-6 rounds, we may be talking about a different conclusion. But that's neither here nor there at this stage. But in my opinion, I think I agree with you guys. I do believe Wilder can beat AJ as much as I am an AJ fan. I've made no qualms about that. The question would fall on AJ would be this. Could he rely on his boxing skill? Because I think all of us agree that he has the superior boxing skill. He's got a way bigger toolbox than Deontay's got. And the thing is could he be disciplined and do like Tyson did? Establish the jab. We all see. I'm telling you, Wilder has zero answer for the jab. Can AJ keep his hand up to protect himself from the right hand, establish the jab, and try to let Deontay wear himself down? Because that's what happens with Deontay. Throwing those home run punches and not connecting wears him down. And I don't know. That's why I want to see this fight. I do believe Deontay could stop him, but I think that AJ has the skill, and if he can put it all together and not have these off nights the way they describe it, I think he could come out victorious. So the next fight.
I think he can do it just 1-2s. Now, I know you're the host and this is Talking Boston Billy C, but I would really just love to hear everybody's opinion of Jared Anderson.
I think
he was impressive.
I think he's too small. I mean, he was impressive against who knows how good Vladimir Terence.
Against what looked like part polar bear. That was an enormous human being.
Well, when he got stung, he got stung. I mean, they should have actually stopped that a couple of punches before.
I thought so too. He
might be too small. You don't think he's too small, Dex?
I think. How old is he? He's in his early 20s, right?
20 or 21.
Okay, 2021. He might get an inch or two bit taller because males stop growing around 25. That's why we always see these fighters start off at like featherweight and they end up at welterweight because the bone mass stops growing at 25. So I think he'll probably fill out to about 6'5", 6'5.5". I think he's going to add another 20-something pounds to him. And I do believe that if he gets better, and Tyson Fury has nothing but great things to say about him. Matter of fact, he was one of Tyson Fury's chief sparring partners. And looking at the condition that he's in, I would like to see this kid move up and develop because, like you said, he's 20. By the time he's 30, which over the last 2 decades, remember, heavyweights haven't hit their prime until after they were 30.
Well, we'll have to keep an eye on him. But
And Frank Sanchez, is it just me, or did Frank Sanchez look just slightly older than Luis Ortiz, even though he's only 29?
I tell you, I don't know. Frank Sanchez impressed me. There's a guy I want to see again. There's a guy I want to see again. He reminded me of a young Tim Witherspoon, but that was just me. You know, I thought he had quick hands. He was smart. He fought a smart fight. He fought to win the fight. He didn't make any stupid mistakes. I liked Sanchez, and I know all the hoopla was around his opponent.
My point is, all these Cuban fighters, they look like they're 20 years older than what they really are.
Well, whatever. They perform like they're 20 years old. But the other fight, Fury now against Usyk, because, you know, obviously they're both going to get hit with mandatories. Usyk has already got a mandatory in Holinas, apparently. But I see that as an intriguing fight. The big question is they're both skilled, but can Usyk overcome that size difference? John, what do you think?
Oh, man. See, I just was thinking that like just a minute ago when you guys were talking about stuff. By the way, I would love to see Tyson Fury fight Tom Molyneux in about 1812, man, and go like 65 rounds. Holy
three times the size.
He would have done well in that era.
Thinking about that book. Wow, that would be great.
I think Fury would have done very well in that era.
Yeah. I think he's really, maybe he's that time traveler I read about all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
But look at that. I'll tell you something. I was looking at I was thinking about our fighter there, our Russian fighter that we had at DKP, and he never really used his size advantage to really.
You didn't know how to fight either. You're talking about the giant, right?
Yeah.
Nikolai Valuev.
Yeah, Valuev. I was at a Don King's Christmas party, and he sat next to me by himself. He was like just sitting there by himself. He didn't even speak English or anything. And then he stood up, and I go, "Holy crap, man! Ridiculous the picture I took. My wife and
I met him in an elevator. We had to take the service elevator in Denmark. Chevelle was fighting in Denmark, and I ended up in this service elevator trying to find. I got lost, and he walks in, right? I made a mistake by getting on the service elevator. He had to get on the service because of his size, and I just look up at this guy, and even his face, and just he was frightening.
Look at it. I met Shaquille O'Neal at the fight that the month before. What's the blonde chick's name that died in the Hard Rock Hotel? The reality star. Shaq was sitting 2 down from her, and I met Shaq. And Shaq's a big, humongous guy, but he's friendly and overwhelming and stuff. And this, what's the fighter's name? I can't remember the guy. Valuev, yeah. Valuev is the scariest, and the thing is he's a really nice guy, sweet.
You'd never know it. And Alex, Boris Karloff, that's him. He could. You get him his guild card, and he could do well. But he was a massive, and it's a shame because he didn't have any talent either, and he reminded me more of the typical the harder they fall character, the big monster guy that didn't really have.
Well, he wasn't a mean guy or anything, but Fury uses all of that 6'9". Man, I was just when I had that volume up today and I was just listening, and maybe it's they had ambient mics in there and I'm listening to and I know all that stuff, but I said to myself, man, he's overwhelming. Wilder and a guy that's going to compete with him now is going to have to be it's going to have to overwhelm him in a weird way. He's going to have to hit him with uppercuts. He's going to have to get inside. He's going to have to do a bunch of stuff. I don't know if Usyk's got it. I didn't see enough from Usyk to say that that's a guy can stand up to Tyson Fury and do all that stuff. I mean, I only saw the one fight. That's all I've seen him fight. But
he's a smart guy. What do you think, Dax? You've been on the Usyk wagon for a long time.
Usyk is a lot bigger. He's not obviously Tyson Fury big, but Usyk's a lot bigger than he looks in person if you've ever met him. He's actually huge. Not too long ago, I remember Kelly Pavlik saying that on the night that he beat Joshua, he doesn't know where they get their stats from because he showed a picture of him next to Usyk. And Kelly Pavlik's a big guy, and he looked more like a welterweight next to Usyk. And Kelly Pavlik walks around at about 185 now. But when Usyk, with that mobility and the turning, I don't think it would be an exciting fight. I just think it would be a fight where he made not Deontay Wilder, I'm sorry, he would make Tyson Fury consistently try to land on him, and it would be an ugly fight. There would be where Tyson Fury would more or less have to pull a Vladimir Klitschko and just maul him and keep him pinned down and use uppercuts and throw him against the ropes and do what Klitschko did to Povetkin, shove him down on the mat and just hope that he has a referee that's not going to disqualify him just because Usyk is just so agile.
What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I think that I agree with some of that. What Dak said, that I think that it could be a very dull fight. I think it's sort of like maybe a same-sex dance party. Who leads? Because I think that's the thing. It's like, who would be the one pressing the action? I don't know. And I think that would be these tremendous lulls. But I think Usyk is incredibly skilled. I think he might be the best. I think he's the best fighter pound for pound in the world right now. But I don't put heavyweights on my pound for pound.
But there's an asterisk with him. He moved up to heavyweight. Remember?
Right.
Yeah,
but I mean,
we had that conversation.
Right. So that's why.
Come on, that was 2 weeks ago. Conversation.
Right. So that's why I would not.
Time difference with you? What is you thinking?
No. I didn't finish. That's why Tyson Fury would not be on my pound for pound list. So he is like in a different echelon because he's the heavyweight champion of the world. I do think that, like has been said, I mean, he's 6'3", so he's not Mike Tyson size. And I think the thing that would be what the size did not matter at all against Joshua, in part because I think Joshua erroneously fought small. Tyson Fury never fights small. So Usyk is going to have to reach up to hit him. So yeah,
that's a great point, Alex. Right there, that fighting tall. A 6'3" guy fighting tall is such a difference. There are tall guys that don't fight tall; they fight downward, and those are the guys that Mike Tyson used to just destroy. Those big, those guys he was fighting in the '80s that were like 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", and then
but you know what? Yeah, but guys, and this goes back to the Klitschko brothers. These guys, when the complexion of the heavyweight division started changing, Lennox Lewis was a monster, but not many other guys were that big. But then it started changing. We started seeing bigger guys. The Klitschkos had to learn how to fight guys that were bigger. They became proficient fighting the smaller guys, punching down with their power. Then when the guys started stepping in the ring the same size, they struggled a little bit. And I think that a guy like Usyk, I thought that he, even though AJ was bigger, and yes, Tyson Fury is going to be, a couple inches bigger than him. I don't think that's going to be an issue with Usyk. I think the issue with Usyk will simply be the size. Can Usyk stay away from Tyson? Listen, when Tyson Fury leans on these guys, it wears them down. It wore down Wilder. It wears down every opponent he's had. But it'll be interesting to see. A couple other topics I wanted to touch real quick.
In terms of scary fighters, I believe that Alexander Usyk is probably the scariest looking fighter I've ever seen in my life. And he's a nice guy, but as we stated in the show after he beat Anthony Joshua, Bill, what would you do if he came to your house to pick up your daughter and said that he'd bring her to the prom?
It depends what look he has. I mean, he does have that stare, and I like the comment that he made once when he said in the fight before AJ, he says, they say, how do you people say you play mind games. He says, I don't do anything. He says they build it up in their own minds and lose, and it's true. But Manny Pacquiao, let's jump ship here. Manny Pacquiao announced his retirement. I think that's a great thing for Manny. It's too bad he went down. His last fight was a loss. It's happened to a lot of great fighters. What's your guys' thoughts on the retirement of Manny Pacquiao? Alex, you can start off.
I'm definitely happy that he's calling it a career. good luck to him because I think he's starting a much more just dirty, corrupt, dangerous career. He's going into politics.
Yeah.
So I do think, if he thought the Agapito Sanchez fight was down and dirty in the mud, wait till he runs for president. But I do think that I'm glad, that he's doing it, that he's, still intact. He had a hell of a career. We haven't seen Manny Pacquiao in a long time, but
he should have walked away after he won the title back when he beat Thurman. Or I guess they stripped him. I don't know. I can't follow the WBA. I don't know. I saw a WBA belt in a gumball machine the other day, but
right. I mean, I'm never going to remember the Thurman fight. I'm never going to remember the Ugas fight. When people talk about Manny Pacquiao, I'll remember that Barrera fight. I'll remember the Ladwaba fight. I'll remember the Morales fights, the Marquez fights. He's first ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt about it.
Dax, what do you think?
I think I would have loved to see him retire after the Thurman fight. I love to see all fighters. I remember Alex making fun of me because the one year when Orlando Salido lost his last fight and it was such a war. And I would have loved to, when guys put so much into the sport like a Pacquiao and that, I don't care because I think they've earned their bones to go out on an easy fight and just to go out on a win. Think about Ali, and when you're younger, just think about how much you hate Trevor Berbick, even though you've never met him because he beat Ali. So I would rather see Manny Pacquiao go out the way he did than for the last memory of Manny Pacquiao, especially for this next era, who is more focused on watching the history of the sport on YouTube. The first thing that they're going to pull up would be Manny Pacquiao being face planted by some unheard of fighter who has retired with a record of 3-17 because Manny Pacquiao decided to stay around a little bit too long. Bernard Hopkins, most people in 20 years are going to remember him being knocked out of the ring by Joe Smith Jr. rather than the Bernard Hopkins that was so dominant at 160 pounds.
Only younger generations. John, what do you think of Pacquiao's retirement?
Awesome, and it's great. What I like about it is he's given himself a solid way to escape boxing. If he wins as president, so I after he said he wanted to run, I was Googling around trying to see. He's pretty popular. He's got a very good chance to win. And if he wins as president, he's never going to come back in boxing. And that's great, because when these guys are broke and they don't have money and they got to come back and keep doing stuff. I was watching Roy Jones today on YouTube talking, and I go, oh, man, he's mumbling, and I can't even understand him. And, after Tarver beat him, that was the day he should have walked away from boxing. And we would all said, all right, Tarver hit him with a punch, but what a great career. Instead, I don't know how many, Alex, 5, 6, 7 knockouts later, terrible knockouts. And he's I know the guy, and guys have a fraction of his ability. The Danny Green fight. Yeah, he's mumbling on YouTube, and I go, oh, God. It's because they got to have money, and they got to come back and fight. And watching Holyfield, stumble around 2 weeks ago, I just go, we almost got to draft a law and say no more. The whole thing with Sal when he couldn't fight in Georgia because they said if you're 50 and you got to have all these fights – we shouldn't have let Sal fight, but we did.
Here's the truth of the matter, John. I don't mean to cut you off, but the truth of the matter is when you're an elite athlete, it's not just boxing. It's all sports. When you're an elite athlete, and unless you are one, and none of us are, so we can't really put ourselves in that mindset. But when you're an elite athlete and you've been used to being the best from Pop Warner in football all the way through your pro career, it's hard to hang up those cleats or those boxing gloves, because your youth, you learn from the mistakes you made in your youth. And then when you reach an older age, you have all this knowledge, but you don't have the body anymore. You don't have the reflexes. You don't have
the money.
You know,
Money.
well, the money is a big thing, and
No,
don't.
money's always it, Billy. These guys are fighting because they don't have money. I know some of these guys personally. They're broke. That's why they're doing this stuff. That is the reason. That some guys come. Sal didn't need the money, but Sal was. But these other guys I was just mentioning, they need the money. That's why they're doing it. That's the only reason they're doing it. Holyfield went broke, man. When Holyfield was fighting for us, he had a 50-room house there. I talked with his wife on a regular basis.
18 bedrooms in that house.
Yes, and I was talking with his wife, Janice, on a regular basis. They fired the staff. They put their money together. The guy went completely broke. That's why he's fighting. You see him; he's on that show on CNBC. That with the guys there that are advising him on his money. Alex Rodriguez is advising him what to do with his money because he doesn't have any money.
That is a smart side.
Legislate it and stop it. Somebody's going to get one of these guys going to get killed in the ring doing this shit.
And it's hard for, and I've been told this by Gabe Ruelas, who Billy knows I did a long series of stories with. I asked him one time, what do you miss the most about the sport? And he said, there's no feeling that I can imagine possible when your music cues and you have 30,000 people screaming to see you. And if you've been to a Canelo fight and see the way 100,000 people erupt, or if you go and you look at the Vladimir Klitschko entrances on YouTube, when there's 95,000 people just literally going crazy just because they see your face and that music cues in the background. Literally, I've had fighters tell me it's like a drug. And, for some guy, they just want it like just one more time. They just want it one more time. They want that feeling one more time.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, the problem is, and again, I'm not just going to point the finger at boxers because other sports, they do the same thing. They because elite athletes are young and they start getting all this money. And quite frankly, they start, raising their lifestyle and everything else. When that gravy train, when that money stops, in boxing, it's more noticeable because it stops so abruptly. That money train stops. But the problem most of them make is their level of living does not stop. They still have the 50-room house John was just talking about. They still have the staff they got to pay. And when you're not making $10 million paydays, that money goes a lot quicker. And, when you have all those leeches hanging on you and you're slipping them money, it goes a lot quicker. And then all of a sudden there's no more source to replenish it. That's the problem. Handful of smart guys, professional athletes. Lennox Lewis he never spent a penny. Gronk, the football player, he never spent a penny yet. There are some smart athletes that had the foresight to see that and save some money. So I think, again,
Gronk is a smart athlete.
Well,
I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. That was a cheap shot.
Hey, he's
They're also smart. Both Klitschko brothers are
same thing.
PhDs. Marco Antonio Barrera came from a rich family. Marco Antonio Barrera actually, I believe, dropped out of law school to become a fighter. Same thing.
That's right.
Same thing with Ricardo Lopez. Ricardo Lopez and Juan Diaz too. Same thing. Juan Diaz was on his way to law school. The baby Bull dropped out to be. So there are some guys that are genuinely intelligent and have.
Well, the question is, did they return to law school afterwards? Most of them probably didn't. But I got another topic I wanted to ask you guys. And I know this is the hottest topic in all of sports. I forget boxing, but rumor has it that we're going to see Oscar De La Hoya against Floyd Mayweather Jr. rematch. Oscar offered $100 million to Floyd. And Floyd said, if you have that, I'll fight you. The question is, does he have it? Do you think that fight's ever going to materialize, John?
No, and I don't want to see it, man. De La Hoya was way past his prime. What do you think he's possibly going to do that's going to be exciting? No, I don't want to see it. He's not going to fork up $100 million for Floyd. And Floyd, by the way, said $100 million wasn't enough. I read for it. I don't want to see it. I'm not paying for it. I didn't pay for Jake Paul or any of these other crap.
I didn't either.
Put my foot down. No, don't want to see it. Not going to pay.
What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, not interested. And I doubt very much that would happen.
Dax?
I have zero interest at all.
I wonder who. Aside from Oscar, hey, the best thing that happened to Oscar is he got COVID and didn't
I
fight
think it's
that
just
last
talk.
fight, because that last fight he probably would have not made out too well.
I honestly believe that, and I've heard from other people inside boxing circles, that's the reason why he was actually trying to get a fight with Canelo, is because Oscar was having money problems.
Yeah, no, that makes the most sense actually. But anyway, I have I keep getting these messages from a longtime listener, my man Augie from Riverhead, Long Island, and he keeps saying, "Well, what's going on with the welterweight division?" He says, when's this guy Porter going to fight? When's Crawford going to fight? So I'd like to tell you, Augie, they're fighting, and they're fighting each other November 20th. I love this fight. Fellas. I think Terrence Crawford doesn't get enough credit, and neither does Sean Porter. And I think that this is a really good matchup. I'm looking forward to it. What do you guys think, Dax?
My question has always been, just like I thought Sean Porter beat Keith Thurman, and Errol Spence Jr. was lucky to get past him. Sean Porter is his own worst enemy because we know that he swarms and he's not accurate. If Sean Porter he has the best stamina in the whole sport. There's no way you can convince me differently. If Sean Porter can be just slightly accurate and maintain that stamina, I think that he can beat Terrence Crawford. I'm not saying he's more talented than Terrence Crawford. I just think Terrence Crawford has never experienced somebody who comes straight forward, has such a solid chin, such a high gas tank, and that's going to be right in his face. And Sean Porter, remember, is physically strong. We mentioned Alexander Usyk before. Sean Porter actually defeated Alexander Usyk in the amateurs when they were young.
Alex, I'm sorry. We've said that, and all of us have said on the show in the past, that Crawford has this mean streak about him. You know, when he steps into that ring, Porter doesn't seem like a mean guy, but maybe that will help him, because I agree with Dax. Porter comes at you. He's throwing punches. You're going to get headbutt. You're going to get busted up. How does Crawford do against Sean Porter?
I think he wins, but I think he's definitely tested. I do think Terrence Crawford is one of the very best in the sport, probably top 3 pound for pound, top 4. I would say probably more like 4, because I'd put Inoue and Canelo ahead of him. And I already mentioned Usyk. But I do think that this is a really good fight. I'm very happy that it's going to happen. It's been too long since we've seen Terrence Crawford fight, and it's very disappointing that he's not fighting Errol Spence. But I would say, one of the top welterweights in the world fighting another top 5 guy in the world is pretty awesome. So I'm very happy with that fight.
John, I liked one of the comments that one of the many commentators on tonight's broadcast said about this fight. They said, Sean Porter is crossing the lines to fight Terrence Crawford. And it was a tongue-in-cheek comment about the PBC fighters, because they don't seem to fight outside the PBC. I like the fact that they are. Is it a win or a loss for Terrence Crawford? Not so much the fight, but do you think he was forced to cross the line?
Well, what other fight does he take? And by the way, Sean Porter is a pretty good announcer on those broadcasts. I'm liking him more and more as he talks. But I'm going to go back.
And he's got energy too.
I agree exactly with what Dax said about Sean Porter is. First of all, it's the fight that Crawford needs to take. I mean, what else is there? That's the fight he needs to take.
Well, nobody really wants to fight him.
You're right. Well, that's the thing. And Sean Porter always seems like, is it me, or does he always seem like a bigger guy in the ring than whatever weight he's fighting at? I always get that. He's one of those guys that just looks bigger than he is.
Well, at welterweight.
Yeah. But I don't know. He just looks like I don't know. He just looks like a bigger guy. So that's I'm looking forward to it. There's not a lot of great fights here. We saw a great fight tonight, But I think that's going to be I don't think that's going to be a letdown. I think that fight's going to be pretty good. We got to see what Terrence Crawford's all about, man. You don't know anything until he gets knocked down and see what he does.
Crawford's never. I mean, Porter's never been in an adult fight. Can you name one?
Right. Yeah, it's true.
No,
It's just-
everything's been.
Yeah,
good.
he's a grinder. He's hyper competitive. Yeah, I think how could it not be a good one?
Yeah.
And I think the layoff of Crawford kind of helps add some intrigue into it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And the difference with this, then, a lot of the modern thing is neither Terrence Crawford nor Sean Porter are trash talkers and shit talkers insulting. These guys are just all business and they're gentlemen.
Yeah, class prize fighters. They're
But-
just gonna
but
come
when-
in there in a hurry.
And they deliver. They deliver in performance and they deliver in energy as much as they deliver in class, which we don't see very much anymore.
I just think that it's a typical tougher fight for Terrence Crawford, because if you look at the welterweight division, Errol Spence Jr. I mean, a lot of people question what's going to happen with him. Plus, he's a bigger guy. I mean, it doesn't look like he wants any part of Terrence Crawford, at least for another several years. And then you got Ugas, who just lost his bid to have a rematch with Manny. I mean, maybe fight a guy like Ugas and unify a title and then force Errol Spence. I don't know. I think Sean Porter's a tough fight for anybody. I do agree that I like the fact that Terrence Crawford is fighting him only because, Terrence Crawford gets criticized by people that don't know the sport, saying he's had an easy rise to the top, and it's not true. He's had a tough opponents. I think his level of opposition has been extremely.
He had it tough at 140. At 147, Sean Porter actually has the best resume. Kell Brook was not the version of Kell Brook that Errol Spence beat. Keith Thurman was at his absolute best. Errol Spence was before Errol Spence got into the car accident. He had the fight with Ugas and go on and on and on. Win or lose, Sean Porter has, the toughest resume at 147, and he's never been dominated.
No, he hasn't. But I was just referring to, we've heard it from fans all the time about TC. So anyway, any final thoughts, Dax?
No, my final thoughts are just, Deontay Wilder, I haven't heard any post-fight comments, but I do believe no matter what he said, and a lot of people, as you stated, get into his ear. He mimics a lot of stuff what people say. Deontay Wilder, in a loss tonight, has redeemed himself in my eyes. I'm not going to say that puts him up there in skill-wise. I'm just talking about in terms of a pure fighter. Deontay Wilder showed tonight he's to the bone. He has the heart of a pure fighter. He's not a quitter, and he's willing to go out on the shield. And I think looking at the way he went out tonight, the talk over the year, and a lot of people were saying, oh, it's just talk. It's not really. I actually believe the thing that bothered Deontay Wilder the most about the last fight is he wasn't able to go out like he did tonight, that they stopped the fight.
I don't know. He was in some serious trouble. Any final thoughts, Alex?
I think I'd just like to say, well, one thing I did miss the knockdown. We actually turned it because the Berlanga fight was so one-sided, and we had my two nephews were like
It was so one-sided. Whose favorite?
in Berlanga's favor, it seemed like, but then I guess I didn't realize that he dropped him.
You must have been watching Berlanga on YouTube from one of his last fights.
But
No.
so well, I mean,
That was your final thought.
So I would like to catch the last couple of rounds of that because we did change it. But then
The last couple of rounds of Fury Wilder?
No, of the Berlanga fight because I missed. I didn't see the
I don't
knockdown.
care about Berlanga. I'm talking about Fury and
Right. So all right. So Fury.
Come on,
Wilder-
let's stick with boxing.
It is boxing.
Oh. But the
So-
fight.
So Fury Wilder. I mean, I would definitely like to see Fury fight Usyk, because then we'd have a unified heavyweight undisputed heavyweight champion. Right now, that's Tyson Fury, and I think that he did what I thought he would do, would knock Wilder out. I thought he would do it easier. He did not do it easier, and that's to Wilder's credit. And we should be all happy about that. So I am.
What do you think, John?
3 things we learned tonight. We learned that Wilder has exactly the amount of skill that we thought he has always had. We learned that he's got a crap load of heart. And we also learned that boxing every once in a while can bring us back to the old days and make us excited and make my voice hoarse, yelling for Deontay Wilder to finish off Fury and make one of the greatest comebacks. It didn't happen, but it was almost there. So that's what we learned tonight.
I think we also learned that the T-Mobile Arena might be the place for boxing here in the States. They seem to be wanting to get all the big fights. I still don't know why we need 9 commentators on a broadcast. John, could you imagine doing an event and having 9 people to deal with and coordinate?
And that girl, that British girl, or whoever she is.
Oh, I love Kelly Abdu. Oh yeah. It's the Heidi Androl.
You can do way better than that, man. All the way around.
I think Heidi Androl is nauseating. I agree with all you guys that Sean Porter was good. They did have to mix up the ESPN and the normal broadcast of the pay-per-views. Brian Kenny is always top notch. I've always liked Lennox Lewis
he's good.
I kind of found Brian Kenny a little bit disturbing with the way he was praising Edward Berlanga.
Well, I'm not crazy about Andre Ward. Max Kellerman, I think he just had to do the time there. He just didn't seem, I don't know. He just seemed either they had him on a short leash like they used to do at HBO or he was just thinking about being someplace else.
He looks annoyed.
My man Larry Hazard was scoring the fights just like myself. Bernardo Osuna, he didn't do too many roll-offs tonight, not with the card that they had. And like I said, Androl was nauseating. But I have one last thing I want to mention, and really it has nothing to do with tonight's card. I got an email from a longtime listener, Mr. James Keister, jameskeister.com. Check it out. He's got some interesting stuff up there. And he said, and it's basically about my book. He said, Billy, I just finished reading your book again, and the best parts are when you wrote about the fights, especially Cribb against Molineux 1. It felt like I wrote the book, and I can't even pronounce his name. It felt like I was watching the fights, no kidding. I realized it wasn't key to the overall point you were making, and he puts in parentheses that Molineux was robbed of his place in history. But I would have enjoyed reading a description of the Donnelly versus Cooper fight. Do you have such a write-up? Seriously, if you wrote a book of descriptions of pre-fight films with backgrounds leading up to the fight, I'd certainly buy that book in a heartbeat. You gave me some ideas, Jim, about that, because some of the early fights, the bare knuckle, the Tom Molineux era, I do have ring accounts and stuff, and that is an interesting point to put it all together, because that was one of my main goals in that book, and Alex knows that as well, that I wanted to have those descriptions of the fight to make the reader feel like he was there. So I appreciate you noticing that. And as far as the Donnelly Cooper fight, the most detailed version you can get is in the book about Donnelly that was written. And if you drop me an email, Billy@talkingboxing, TalkinBoxing.com, I'll give you all the information. I would give it to you now, but it's not in my mind right now. So I'll give you all the information of exactly how to get it. But I really appreciate that.
Is Dan Donnelly's arm still on display somewhere?
That's a whole thing in itself. That's why it's worth to read that book. It was stolen. Remember, it was stolen through the years and stuff. But it is on display. It was recovered. And for all of you that don't know what Alex is talking about, Donnelly was a huge fan favorite in Ireland. And at that time, grave stealing was popular because the medical field didn't have cadavers, I guess. They had to steal them from the grave, or it was illegal to practice on, whatever the case was. So there was a lot of that going on. But with Donnelly, they think, and if you read that book, they think that it was surgically removed and then found its way for a long time, over 150 years, circling around in different displays. It was stolen. Some people think it's not really his anymore, but it is an interesting story. Did you read that book, the Dan Donnelly book?
No, but I of course had to look into the arm.
Yeah.
Because I'm a morbid guy, and that's a morbid story.
Yeah. Patrick, the book, it's all coming to me. Patrick Myler is the author of the book, and punch it up, Dan Donnelly. It's a great read. But anyway, listen, fellas, I appreciate you joining me tonight, and we certainly had a great fight to talk about, and it's going to be interesting to see where these two guys go from here. But we'll certainly be back next big fight. What is the next big fight, Dax?
The next big fight is, you know what? I have to look. I'll tell you right now.
Well, I know Porter is in November. I think there's another fairly big fight.
Yeah, that's not until November 20th.
November 20th.
Jamel Herring and Shakir Stevenson are on the 23rd.
Yeah, what about Canelo? He's fighting.
That's in November too.
So we're gonna have a busy November.
Yeah, we are going to have a busy November. The 16th, we have a great card in the cruiserweight card in Latvia. That's on. But unfortunately, the U.S. fans don't appreciate the cruiserweights. But
I love it.
The unification bout between on the 15th, we have Manuel Navarrete against Joel Gonzalez.
That's Friday night, right?
That's a Friday night.
Yeah,
this Friday.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, listen. Maybe we'll be more busy than I thought in October, but November is going to be a busy month.
That it is. November, we got a lot of great fights in November, and to close out the year. And December, Lomachenko returns, and Lomachenko's going to fight Richard Comey.
That ought to be an interesting. I love Lomachenko. I know he fought recently. That was under the radar of mine, anyway. But all right.
And
you know what else?
And Demetrius Andrade has proven once again why Canelo's ducking him, because he'll be facing the ever dangerous, nobody knows Jason Quigley.
Yeah. Dax, I appreciate it. Keep up the good work. Alex, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, you know what else happens in November? Tofurkey.
Huh? I don't get it.
Tofurkey, like instead of Thanksgiving turkey, it's tofurkey.
For you? That's unfortunate for you. I thought you were
self-deprecating joke.
Yeah, well, you enjoy that tofurkey. I'll have my usual turkey and lasagna and everything else. That's always tough to have shows in November, but I appreciate it. I know you're traveling. Give my best to your brother, and I'll talk to you soon, Alex.
Will do. Good night, John. Good night, John.
All right, later, guys.
John, any final thoughts?
Nothing. Great night of boxing. I was happy to see it. It was worth the $80. I'll tell you that much. Definitely.
Yeah, the one fight. One fight. The rest of the card didn't really do much.
Nope, not much. But it was worth it. That $80 was worth that fight.
I mean, I do want to see more Frank Sanchez. I think Ajagba has potential as well. I think similar to the rise of Deontay Wilder. He's been pretty protected, and tonight he fought, another guy that's better than obviously his team thought. But it's going to be interesting to see where Robert Helenas goes. I know they're talking about him.
Interesting guy, that Helenas.
Yeah,
he's like a guy, if you could train him, boy, he has pinpoint accuracy, and he's big and tall. I'd like to see him fight Tyson Fury.
Well, he's probably going to fight Usyk. He's probably going to.
That's what it looks like, right? He's the mandatory for Usyk, right?
Yeah, that's what they said for the WBA.
Yeah.
But anyway, John, thanks for coming on.
All right, brother.
I appreciate it, and I look forward to you next time.
All right, man. Later.
All right, take care. That's John Musciunas, joined tonight by my normal crew, my man Alex and Dax, and of course John Musciunas stopped by and gave us his thoughts. In case you just tuned in, or in case you've been under a rock, the third fight, Tyson Fury against Deontay Wilder, ended in dramatic fashion. Tyson Fury knocked out Wilder, at 1 minute and 10 seconds of the 11th round. Fury now improves to 31 wins, no losses, 1 draw, 22 of his wins coming by knockout. Deontay Wilder drops the second fight of his career, both of his losses at the hands of Tyson Fury. He's now 42 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw. The draw also at the hands of Tyson Fury. Appreciate you guys joining us. I look forward to the next time. And I'll say this. Just make sure you tune in next time, same bat channel. Until then, I'll leave you with this. Ciao, baby.